So you've got this high-stakes summit, right? A dramatic Alaskan backdrop, the US and Russia finally meeting to talk about the war in Ukraine. And on the surface, wow, it looked like a huge step forward. But here's the question. Was it real progress or just a really, really good show? Let's break down what happened at the Alaska Summit and explore that massive gap between the optics and the substance. 10 out of 10. That's it. That was President Trump's score for his meeting with Vladimir Putin right out of the gate. I mean, you really don't get much more confident than that, do you? And it's that exact confidence, that perfectly crafted image of success, that we're really going to dig into here. All right, so first things first, let's set the stage. We're in Anchorage, Alaska on August 15th, 2025. And you might be wondering, why Alaska? Well, it's kind of that symbolic middle ground, you know? It's like a bridge between these two world powers. And make no mistake, this was not just some casual chat. This was a massive diplomatic event, and the whole world was watching. So who was in the room? The two key players, of course, President Trump and President Putin. They met for almost 3 hours at a joint military base. And the official goal, well, it was huge. They were there to find some way, any way, to move forward on the devastating war in Ukraine. I mean, the stakes just couldn't have been any higher. Okay, so we've got the who, what, and where. But here's where it gets really, really interesting. It's not just about what was said behind those closed doors. It's about how the entire event was staged for the cameras. To really get what happened in Alaska, you've got to look past the policy for a minute and start with the performance, the pure spectacle of it all. Seriously, this wasn't just diplomacy. It felt more like theater. Just think about the visuals they were creating. You had the red carpets rolled out. You had these precision military flyovers. And then, the most dramatic detail of all, a B-2 stealth bomber, this massive symbol of American power, was there to greet Putin's plane as it landed. Every single one of these elements was pure stagecraft, and it was all designed to scream, this is a historic moment. And look, this carefully managed perception wasn't just coming from the US side. Oh no, President Putin played his part perfectly too. He called the talks productive, constructive, and mutually respectful. You see the pattern here, right? Both leaders were sending the exact same carefully synchronized message. Everything is going great. And that friendly, we're all getting along tone didn't stop there. Putin even invited Trump to Moscow for a follow-up meeting. A gesture like that, that's pure diplomatic signaling. It's meant to show the world that this isn't just a one-off meeting, but maybe, just maybe, the start of something new. Okay, so we've seen the show. The handshakes, the positive quotes, the military hardware. It all looked incredibly impressive, but that was the performance. The real question, the one that actually matters, is what was achieved. So let's peel back that curtain and look for the actual substance. And here it is. Here's the number that tells the real story. 0. After all that pageantry, after all the talk of a 10 out of 10 meeting, the summit produced exactly 0 formal binding agreements. Nothing. Nada. Zip. And this slide, I mean, it just illustrates that disconnect perfectly. On one side, you have all the rhetoric. You've got words like productive and constructive. And on the other side, you have the actual outcome. No agreement was reached. Putin's core demands on Ukraine hadn't budged an inch. And that joint press conference? It was a brief 12-minute statement where no questions were allowed from the press. And you know, in a way, President Trump kind of admitted it himself. If you listened closely, buried under all that optimism was this one little line. There's no deal until there's a deal, which is, of course, the classic political way of saying, yeah, we feel good about this, but we haven't actually agreed to anything yet. So you have the leaders presenting this picture of total success. But the reality was, well, a lack of substance. So how did that play out on the world stage? Because you can be sure that other countries, especially Ukraine, were watching this whole display of diplomacy very, very closely. The reaction from foreign policy experts, it was swift, and let's be honest, it was pretty brutal. They looked right past the ceremony, they saw the lack of results, and the consensus was pretty clear. The whole thing was diplomatically underwhelming. And you have to remember, for Ukraine, this was anything but an academic debate. Officials there were deeply skeptical. I mean, can you imagine their position? Seeing all these friendly photo ops and positive statements, but no concrete agreements to back it up? The fear was that this whole spectacle didn't just accomplish nothing, it might have actually weakened their leverage. So we've seen the stagecraft and we've seen the lack of substance. When you put it all together, what's the single biggest takeaway from the Alaska Summit? what does this whole story really tell us? At the end of the day, the story of the summit is really a story about a major imbalance. It was an event that was incredibly heavy on pageantry, the visuals, the rhetoric, all that theatrical energy, but it was remarkably light on any actual progress toward its stated goal of ending the war in Ukraine. So ultimately, the Alaska Summit leaves us with a much bigger question, one that goes way beyond this one meeting. In the world of high-stakes diplomacy, when is all this spectacle, all this pageantry, a tool that actually helps create progress, and when is it just a substitute for it? It's something to think about.